So hello and welcome back to the channel, and welcome to another Assetto Corsa Competizione video. As you can see, just enjoying a little bit of a replay from a recent multiplayer race, just doing the usual rounds around Silverstone. It's proving quite a popular circuit, Silverstone, although it's not particularly one of my favourite circuits. But yeah, a very good competition and really clean racing. Had a brilliant battle. I forget the name of the driver, but certainly added instantly as a friend. Definitely enjoy racing a number of people recently, and that friend base just starting to build, especially with good drivers within the Assetto Corsa Competizione community, and just some really good racing. Managed to be, I think I'm a tiny bit quicker on the setup that I've got, but trying to find a way past this guy was proving quite difficult. Even down the long straight here, he seemed to be running, maybe he was running a little bit less wing than I am, so I was quicker in some of the twisty stuff, but down the straight, even though I'm right up in his slipstream, I just don't seem to be able to get any further alongside. And then during the cutback there, he just manages to cover off the inside line. So although I got the momentum, just couldn't carry it through the corner. Very good car positioning. And again here, I think we're both just running wide, really just pushing the tyres to the limit through this 20-minute session. But it all came down to this final last lap, really. And we're both just tackling here for third place. The other two drivers much further ahead, but such an entertaining race this was. Really, I've had a couple of good races at Silverstone and also at Bathurst recently, which I might feature in the next video. But yeah, as for this video, we're going to be looking at the issue with the times on the leaderboards. Really do get into what's going on with those times as well. And unfortunately it does carry over into online racing as well, which was quite disturbing, really. Quite why they're doing it the way they are, I've got no idea. But after we've looked at that, I'll move on to looking at wet setups and just how to get the best out of a wet setup, some things that some people might be struggling with. So let's get on with it. So yes, here we are at Monza, just doing the testing here, as it was a little bit easier because I've been doing quite a bit of running here recently, and I was quite capable of just putting the laps in. So on this lap I've just done a very basic lap, not pushing the car at all. So just wanted to see what the slow time lap was. So looking on the left hand side of the screen at number 13 in the Porsche, this is the one that I'm going to be using. And I've just set a 1:52 lap. So I've come back into the pit and I'm going to head back out now, and I'm just going to nail the first sector only, and then I'm just going to back the way off and just see if it picks up the first sector that I've put in during this lap. So I've not gone any faster. I think I've done a 1:55 during this setting, but if you see, as we come to the lap itself, you can see I've lit up the purple sector in sector 1. So although I've gone fastest overall in sector 1, it's kept the sectors from my previous lap because they were actually faster, although it hasn't altered the lap time that I've generated. So that's just because it was a slower lap, it's just not changed that at all. So I went back out this time round and thought I would try and beat the second two sectors, but I'm not sure whether I actually did that or not. I managed to beat the lap time that I'd set, still not managing to beat that first sector time, but it's accounted again for the laps. So this time round I went back out and thought I would try and nail a full lap. into the 149s and obviously top the leaderboard straight away. But as you can see from the sector times, it's just taken the fastest personal best from the previous run and added it to the best personal best during this session to get the 149.3. But let's move on. So just moving on to a different circuit, and I thought I'd come to Brands Hatch just to see how the leaderboards fare at Brands Hatch, just in case it was something very specific to the Monza leaderboards. I really wasn't sure at that stage, but yeah, it does exactly the same thing at Brands Hatch, so I'm assuming this would be the same for every other circuit. So I thought, well, where else to do some more testing really? So I thought I would come to the online lobbies, just had a little look through, and looking at the top lobby there, first practice 1 with over 1,440 minutes still left available. I thought, well, this is the perfect place just to do some testing and not get drawn into doing any sort of racing really. So off to Zandvoort we went, and just obviously the track conditions are somewhat treacherous, obviously catching a few other drivers out just on my opening lap here, and I've already passing 2 other drivers that are having issues with the conditions, and the conditions are on medium rain. Quite a long session. I assume this was someone doing some testing for an upcoming race. The same lobby was still available the next day, to be honest. But yeah, put in a lap, and yeah, it just records as per usual. These do account for the lap time that's there, and this is exactly how I would expect to see every single lap that I put in really, although that lap deltas doesn't seem to be available for us on console. It's just keeping that one time, and it's obviously the fastest time that you're able to set. Obviously I go back out and set another lap into the 144s, but as you can expect, things aren't as they seem, and I'm not quite sure why it hasn't recorded a 153, but obviously it was just the one lap in one sector in the middle that was better. It's a really strange way of doing it, I think, and I'm not sure that they've planned that this was the way the leaderboards were going to work and this was how it was going to generate your lap time. It's just a bit weird for me. Definitely I don't think this is how the lap time should be set. So just to clarify really what's going on with the leaderboards is that they are setting them as your personal best sectors are what is displayed, although the fastest lap that you've been able to set is actually what's on the leaderboard. So although it shows the sector times, they aren't actually the sector times that equate to the lap that you've been able to post, which is a really strange way of doing things if you ask me. Not particularly how it should be done. If you set a fast lap, it should contain all the sector times within that lap, if you ask me. But yeah, let's get on to looking at driving in the wet rain. And as you could see, I've just put a little circle around the traction control section there a little bit earlier. I'll do it again now just to show you. But in the traction control settings on the left hand side, you can see that I'm running 10 and 10. Something that's going to be very important towards setting a fast lap. Now, as you can see also through driving this lap, if you've been watching my line around the circuit, you'll notice full well that I'm not using the full width of the circuit in a lot of key areas, and that's not particularly a good thing. It's something that I'll cover further. So let's get into getting faster in the rain. So here we are then at Zandvoort in the rain, and I created a new session here just using a race weekend because I wanted the setup to be used actually in a race. I seem to be finding that doing a lot of these setups in hot laps and practices just doesn't carry the speed over into the races for some reason. So I think from now on I'm going to start doing my setups within an actual race weekend, so I know it actually does work in a race itself. So coming back to set a lap and having created the same conditions, you'll see that I've changed the traction control slightly. Probably spent about an hour in the actual online lobby in the first instances, and then having created this setup, it does feel a little bit different coming back to the circuit. So I spent a little bit more time adjusting some of the setup. For some reason through this section I don't ever seem able to go flat out full throttle, but on the online lobby I could carry full throttle through that section. Whether with the number of drivers driving around the circuit, it was actually clearing a little bit more of a dry line through there, and because on this session there's just me out on the circuit at the moment, but yeah, it never seems to clear up enough for me to be able to go full throttle through some areas that I was able to do during the online session. But yeah, started to just get a banker lap in here, and as you can see, having spent a little bit more time at the circuit, I'm able to carry a little bit more speed through some areas, and definitely using more of the circuit, although I definitely haven't got the car set up at all as yet. This is the process that I wanted to do during this video, just to show you the differences in where we're going to take the car from initially having a fairly good setup, but not having the setup really dialed in to what I'm capable of and what the car's actually capable of. So just starting us off there, we've hit a 147.5, and we can start looking at changing a few things. Now moving to the rear cambers, in fact we'll start with the casters at the front, something that I would suggest increasing, especially for driving in the rain. The casters will add a lot more weight to the wheel itself, and if you almost imagine let's say like a Hell's Angels style chopper motorbike, that's sort of what's happening with the caster. The angle of the suspension is sort of going more diagonal into the wheels, which creates, the car wants to go in a straight line. The steering wheel wants to go back to being straight when you're not turning the wheels. So it's a good thing in the wet to try and get the car to pull straight where it can, but it also adds a little bit more weight to the wheels, so you're sort of increasing the force feedback effects. You're getting a tiny bit more camber as you enter the corners as well, but you get the benefit of having the tyre patch much flatter to the surface under straight line scenarios. So when you're braking in a straight line, you get the best tyre contact, and then when you're turning through into the corners, you're getting a little bit more camber added to the camber settings through the wheel, but it's also increasing the actual weight through the wheel. Something that I think is probably a good thing to add in most sim racing scenarios, because you could just reduce the force feedback on the wheel if the wheel feels too heavy, but you can still enjoy the benefits of adding the caster. Something that will work in many scenarios, but I definitely think using extra caster in the rain is a good benefit to feel more detail through the front end of the car. Moving into the traction control settings, and definitely something to spend a little bit of time messing around with here. As you can see from the first lap that we did in a 147.8, just adjusting the casters, and we're into a 146.5, so 1.2 seconds just out of one caster adjustment. And you'll notice here just how much more acceleration there is from adjusting the traction control. Obviously it's definitely down to driver skill as well, how you can manage the acceleration through the pedal, and obviously trying to get that car nice and straight before you're accelerating again, to make use of the power that you're able to put down. but certainly something that you really need to master is the accelerator control, where you can sort of put the power down without lighting the wheels up and losing that traction. But something that really is worth exploring, how much you can push the less or the least amount of traction control that you can use within the wet will certainly stand you in good stead, especially through the acceleration phases in the straight line sections of the circuit. The more you're able to modulate how much power you're putting into the car, the better acceleration you're always going to get. But yeah, it's definitely a skill thing, I think, when it comes to how much you dare run the traction control during wet conditions, but something that is certainly very rewarding if you're able to run a lower traction control setting. So obviously, having bettered the lap there, I've come back in and going to start playing around with the rear cambers. Obviously, if we lower the camber angle, as we've lowered it down to 3 from 4, we're going to get more of a contact patch through straight line acceleration. Obviously, through the corners, you're going to start to reduce the actual tyre patch as the car leans over onto one side. Usually that's going to sort of increase the contact patch, but obviously as we've lowered it slightly, that could be an issue, so definitely something to pay attention to. If you're losing rear grip through the corners, you've obviously taken the camber too far, something that I'll cover shortly. But as you can see, we're getting far better acceleration, especially out of the corners and continued onto the straights. Doesn't seem to be at the detriment of cornering ability, although obviously I'm learning more and more where I can position the car, using more and more of the circuit. But yeah, seems to handle quite nicely with -3 on the cambers. Just a little twitch coming out of there, something that will get better as we progress through the session, but we'll cover a few more things before we leave the camber settings. But yeah, definitely spend a little bit of time messing with the cambers, just increasing them, decreasing them, moving blocks depending on the time that you've got available. Certainly when you're dialing in the finer points, obviously you could see I jumped from 4 to 3. You might want to do 3.7, 3.4 before you reach 3, or you might go to 3 and then work your way back up. So as you can see there, just setting a little bit of a faster lap, nearly a full second even in that section. So just coming back into the pits, obviously we've made a little bit of a gain, moving down to 3 from 4. So obviously then your natural progression would be to think, let's go from 3 to 2. But let's just see how that fares as we get back out on the circuit. Probably one of the trickiest corners in my opinion, this one. Just slightly off camber as you come through there, and as you can see, not running enough camber on the tyres at the rear just causes too much of a slide through this section. Time and time, lap after lap, I seem to struggle through that corner, and again through this one being able to get the power down coming out of there. Although there's not much of a corner that we seem to be taking, it still seemed to trouble me on numerous laps, just with the rear end just losing traction. I did come back in and start doing some adjustments with the rear toe angle, just trying to get the car not to rotate so much using the toe settings, but none of these really seem to have any benefit, and a lot of the setups I tend to use at the moment are using no camber, no toe effects at all at the rear. Just seem to run better that way for some reason. But yeah, I thought I would try going the other way on the camber settings, just to try and increase the cornering grip, going to 5. But as you can see, coming through this section, I do make a tiny error there, to be honest, and I was probably already on the way to the gravel trap, even with different camber settings, but yeah, it just didn't seem to benefit the car at all, running that much extra camber. You reach a point where you're running more camber and the wheel starts leaning over, and you start to lose cornering grip. So just coming back into the setup and adjusted them back to the sweet spot of -3.0, and I thought I would go back out this time and just have a little bit of mess around with the traction control settings, and mostly the engine mapping. Usually it runs at 4 in wet conditions in the Porsche, but you can use 8, which is qualifying wet conditions, which is supposed to be using the qualifying power, but still with quite a linear throttle. And I say a linear throttle, it means the application of the power going down is supposed to be as if you're sort of gradually applying the power. But obviously you can see it still seems to be applying the power a lot quicker than the race settings, and definitely recommend going back to just using the 4 on the engine map, and rather than adjusting the power output through the engine, I recommend using the TC2 and TC settings. Now the TC setting determines when the power is going to be cut, so as you start to apply the power, it might choose less of a grip level to start cutting the power at, so it sort of determines when the power is going to get cut, TC1. Now TC2 determines how much of that power is going to get cut. So let's say, just for example, you had 600 horsepower at TC 11 or TC2 and using the 11, or TC cut using the 11 section. That might be limiting the amount of power down to just 300 horsepower whenever the traction control's enabled. Obviously once you've got good grip, the power would then ramp back up to 600, but initially it's cutting how much power is put down. So in wet conditions you might only want, say at 11, cutting it to 300, and then as you went to 10, maybe it delivers 320 horsepower, and it's how much power is being cutted. Cutted's not really a word, is it? But how much power is being cut. But definitely spend some time in the traction control settings. I really do think that it does pay a huge amount of dividends, really. The more that you're able to manage how much power is getting put down. Obviously, if you go all the way to 1111, it's cutting the power much sooner. TC1 or TC2, but TC is determining when the power gets cut. So it's sort of like, it's very hard to explain when the power's getting cut. You might go to accelerate and the engine's saying no, it's not ready yet, we've definitely not got anywhere near enough grip, whereas you start going towards 11, it's like no, we definitely haven't got enough grip left yet, and it's sort of stopping you putting any of the power down at TC11. So to conclude the video, I'd definitely recommend spending a lot of time understanding how the traction control is working and getting your head around how much you can manage in the wet the traction control. I'd probably recommend starting at 1111, and on TC1 just start bringing the level down, so go from 11, 10, 9, 8, and then gradually as you start to lose traction through the corners you end up drifting a little bit more. Obviously you're not ready for that level. Let's say if you're going to move from 7 to 6, you might find 6 is too much, but 7 you're quite capable, so you might go from 711 to 710, 7 9, maybe it'll start twitching a bit then. But definitely spend a little bit of time messing with the traction control adjust the cambers at the rear as well, and yeah, they're and the casters as well. They're the three main things I think do help a heck of a lot when you're doing rain racing. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed the video. I hope it's been useful. Please do like and subscribe. Share the videos with others. Certainly something interesting coming up in the next video, in collaboration with a new website that's being developed, all regarding setups for cars, especially in Assetto Corsa Competizione. Just been doing a little bit to help the developer over the past couple of days, and something that I'll explain more in a full video to come in the next few days. But yeah, going through the timetable during this free practice session, all of the set times actually add up to the given times, and there's no effect there. But yeah, let's look over the setup. So just starting off as usual with the tyre setup, and as per usual trying to get the tyres around 30 psi in the wet conditions, and just spend a little bit of time playing around with the camber settings, going from different angles like 5 down through 4 to 3. Just try and find something that works for yourself, but I settled on 3. Moving to the electronics, like I said, just play around with TC1, and if you reach a point where you're starting to lose the rear end, or it feels stable enough to start messing around with TC2, just spend a bit of time on that. Obviously I changed the brake discs to brake discs 1, but yeah, moving on to the mechanical grip, and most of the setup is based around trying to get more rear end stability, so softening out the rear end and moving to the dampers as per usual. If your bump is at 4, then the rebound would be at 8, and so on. Just try and double the rebound is my my tip, and obviously running maximum downforce. Just a little bit of a rake on the car, and that's the setup. Thanks for watching guys, and ciao for now.